Hello, everybody. This is Captain Sweep of the USS Penetrator and the Chill Zone Empire that is barely hanging on as Quagar and the hot dog ravage the universe. And so we've had this incredible meeting of minds to ask Quagar the Pacifist to come to discuss what is going on inside the mind of this man as he ravages the universe. And so for the first question of the day, what kind of how did you come in philosophically into this kind of game? What were you looking to do from the get-go?
Well, first of all, there's a misunderstanding with Quagar. Quagar's not really a bad guy. I'm not a bad guy, but my role is bad guy. I came into the universe looking to protect the Jabetian people, where we had created a large border to keep the Jabetian people safe. Grabbed a few allies along the way, a group called the Ravagers, and looked to mainly maintain our borders at first.
And that changed somewhere along the way.
It did. As we attempted to secure our borders, other empires continually tried to penetrate Jabetian space. Really.
Continually.
Yes.
Where was this? I don't even know where your space is. Is it somewhere in the far east, isn't it?
Yeah. The far say top right area of quarter of space.
Okay. And so you're saying that lots of new empires were coming in all the time, but there seemed to be a lot of empires being destroyed in your area of the space. Do you have sort of like a compulsion perhaps to destroy other empires?
Within that quarter of space to ensure the safety of the Jabetian people, yes, any empires within that quadrant of space were assimilated into the Jabetian Empire.
I see. There's something that everyone is asking, and it's just you seem to be able to build at a higher rate than everybody at an astounding rate. Can you give some sort of tips as to how you're able to do this?
I can. And there has been some confusion as due to the resource collection as one of my allies, and I must say that my resources are built on the backs of the Jabetian people, and not the same way that my ally has gathered those resources. So I will, in the interest of increasing strength within the galaxy, I will share. So early on, while respectfully watching the videos of Captain Sweep, you mentioned Midway and the aircraft carriers and assault fighters. Very good observation. I also think back to that, and I've taken many learnings from that era of human history. And many times, advanced weaponry played a large piece in battle. But what swang one of the most largest pieces of human history was actually economy and production. Rather, there were some forces that actually had some greater technology, but not able to produce at that rate. So the Jabetian Empire focused on first things to make them faster, things like social developments, planetary computers, fusion power plants are all priority first. In research, mining became the first priority rather than war or engines. Through the orbital mining, both organics and metal alloys are largely taken care of, leaving mining ships to take care of the lanthanide resource gathering. It created a very dangerous start where if war had happened earlier, the Jabetian would have not fared well. One other piece that happened early in the game was a commitment from the Jabetian people that every solar system colonized or conquered would each have their own engineering ship.
Hmm.
I tell you this, I am sharing the Jabetian secrets, but these are the things that were different this time than last time, than other times, especially with the engineering ship in every solar system.
Okay. So that you could double production on ships, you could double production on everything pretty much, right? And they, yeah.
At first focused on orbitals and protection for those systems, but after global defense nets were created, light cruisers are not do not take too long for an engineering ship to be built, and floods of light cruisers flanked with some battle cruisers and battleships were created, and one solar system dedicated to assault fighters and heavy carriers.
And you seem to colonize quickly, and you seem to have the resources to get those colonies going at a rate higher than everybody else.
The two space yards dedicated to colony ships.
Oh.
2 space yards dedicated to mining ships.
Oh.
So
Continually.
continually. We were blessed with a solar system that had 3 planets with 700 to 800 metal alloys.
What?
Yeah.
That
Nothing good to colonize, but lots of good to mine within my own solar system.
Holy cow. Because RCG was saying that he was on some system with 7 gas planets and light years away from everything. So his start was horrible.
There was certainly it made the start slower because there wasn't anything of value to colonize within the, but once the mining was reached, there was some plentiful alloy there, and then a soon conquered solar system had 3 planets with not as high but mineable lanthanides.
Holy, 3 planets with over 700 parts per million metal alloys in your system. That's unheard. Did you find that the planets, the selection was a lot lower this time out?
It's specifically with organics and species, hostile, primitive, advanced, ancient. A very high likelihood that if there is species there already, that there was 0 organics. Until just recently, would not allow the Jabetian to colonize anywhere that had a 0 for any of those 3.
Right.
Yeah.
But you notice differently because you've been in what, three or 4 of the tests that I found each time the quality of planets is getting worse and worse, and they're harder and harder to find.
Agreed. The very first galaxy the Jabetians entered into was the best of planets.
Wow, that's a good start. And you started in the far right, and you never really had as you started early, because you can get, again, if you're always just going on mining production first, you have to build up your infrastructure to get to the warships. And if you were attacked earlier, like if you were beside Jib right away, that would have been a very different situation.
Yeah, traditionally Jib and I find each other early, and that helps to push us both, actually, but also to prevent us from doing what we want to do. We disrupt each other's plans, and without that disruption, that didn't occur this time. I was slower to invade initially than many of the other civilizations as well, where I made sure to look after my economy first and tempered my invasions of others. So I never got into a slow spot where economy wasn't a problem.
What about all the deadheads this time around? There seemed to be a different game too, because there was quite a few players that started, but then didn't continue, and so they're low-hanging fruit. And you seem to be around a lot of those, but those planets were no.
I was late with that. Many of the other Ravagers were celebrating their victories long before I had taken one.
Huh.
However, I did bomb every single one of them before invading, and because I looked after my economy, that didn't create a slowdown for me at some point because of my more tempered invasions. Not to say I didn't invade, I definitely did, and probably invaded longer than others because the deadheads around me didn't go early. They happened in a more gradual method rather than right away.
And so you teamed up early again, I guess, with Hot Dog and RCG. So did you guys had the alliance kind of going in?
The Ravager Alliance is as this is the second game of the Ravager Alliance. I introduced Hot Dog to the game several games ago, and he was a very late arrival. I think he was maybe a month to late into that game. But this game he started on time. RCG, just with his provocativeness, seemed like a good member for the Ravagers, with trying to be the evil entity or the people that poke others through the galaxy.
And so I guess your nemesis Jib, it seems like you guys have pretty much got control of the game. It's going to be pretty it is pretty one-sided, right? We've never reached this stage before. I mean, we've never been able to play all these players before. But kind of strangely, all of us were on the left-hand side of the board. And so we're kind of stuck in there. And now you guys have control of the air and just sort of biding your time towards invasions, I guess. But I guess, as you know, it's a little tougher to invade colonies once they get established. So you've been pretty wise in holding off.
So this was others may not want to hear this, but this was a strategic plan. Previously, when bombing it made sense because it was cost effective, because bombing would damage your enemy, but you would also take heavy losses yourselves. Recently, there's been changes to bombing, so bombing is actually no longer effective. I'm sure you saw it this game as well, that bombing actually is at the point where it doesn't work anymore. So before, I would invest resources and ships into bombing, and yes, others would have damage or lose colonies, but I would lose ships in droves. This time, knowing that bombing was basically taken out of the game, we went in with a different strategy to only build warships and to take away all space. Our strategy had to change with the game changing. I hope bombing goes back to being a part of the game that isn't just 500 ships at endgame, and that it actually becomes a useful part of the game again, because honestly, my strategy this time was a little bit tongue-in-cheek to say that, hey, if we're not going to waste ships on if bombing is not useful, I'm not going to invest in it, and I will simply take away all space. But in the interest of the game, Quagar is going to pull back all ships to Jabetian space for 14 space years.
For 14 years.
Indeed. Other than the ones that are currently already barricading somewhere, those will have to be removed. But there's only single ships there; they should be easily removed. But fleets will be removed to Jabetian space.
Oh wow! What about your partner? Is he going to do that? Because he seems to be getting real tight with me. He's set up a colony right beside my home world, and I think if you hadn't arrived, I had won a couple of quick early victories, and he was dead.
Yeah, absolutely was on the ropes at that point. I'd made a tough choice about a week before that, whether to go for velocity or the engines, and I thought I had more time, and I chose velocity. Although that worked out in the long run to my resources, yeah, absolutely. That kicked my resources into high gear,
right.
which ended up ultimately being the right choice. But it left 4 to 5 days of a lot of pain and fear for the Ravagers, as we could not. Thankfully, I was able to intercept some of your fleets due to just the number of ships placed. But there was fear about the speed of your ships when we could not match that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was surprised. I was very surprised because I didn't expect victory. Every time there's a victory, I don't expect it, because so many times it can go the other way, where you think you're going to win and all of a sudden you don't. But no, I thought, it's kind of like, what would be the example? I mean, it was a bit like France in the 1940 and the phony war, right? Where you're at war, but nothing's occurring. And so you send a couple of patrols over, or you do something and you think, okay, we're doing well, but you don't realize that, in a couple of months, the blitzkrieg's coming with 20 armored divisions. I knew that. I knew at some point you were showing up, and I knew you were going to show up. I mean, you showed up with freaking 90 ships when I had 10, or no, I maybe had 20, but like 10 carriers of any worth in the rest, and you show up with 90 ships.
I think it was 50 to 60, but it was
Was
they had I've been building them slowly, light cruisers and battle cruisers mostly, and then the one system dedicated to the carriers. But they were slow, so it was waiting for those engines and then keeping them hidden until retrofit night. And then once retrofit night happened, it was time to fly.
Yeah. So I mean, if Jib was building infrastructure, so he didn't have much, and that was it. Basically you come in with the big fleet, pop everyone's orbitals and stuff. And I mean, that's the thing I don't quite like. I think that your fleet should have been mowed down a bit, by the fighting algorithm is still a bit off by having one side win so much, without
Agreed.
having damage to your ships or fuel or anything, right?
Agreed. I'd like to understand it more so I could provide better suggestions towards it. I don't know if it's side by side initiative or if it's individual ship initiative, but there needs to be a greater balance there so that perhaps each ship has its own. So there's more balance rather than like 100 ships from one side firing and then
Yeah.
70 from the other side firing. Like that. I'd like to see more of a ship by ship balance there.
Has to, like, it's, and I think some way of bringing formations in where you can have, let's say, a phalanx or spread out, or like formation against formation that actually affects and I think that's where the potential of the game has, right? Like there are certain parts of the game which are really well done well mathematically, but other parts that need quite a bit of work. So
there's a element in a game called Galactic Civilizations called logistics, I think it's called, and your logistics decides how many points you can add to a fleet, and a smaller ship has less points and a higher ship has higher points, and it would create maximum fleet sizes.
Oh,
we would have to, all sorts would need to be considered for that, for like maximum orbitals around a planet or things like that. Or
right.
maybe it doesn't. Maybe it means that you just need to get better logistics in order to attack a planet that has that many orbitals. But it's another mechanic that I think could be of value, especially in the current state when we get too many ships. It starts to combat devolves, I think, even worse the larger the amount of combat participants.
Like the star conditions, like I just wonder if at the beginning it was last man standing as a win condition, so it'd be harder for you to have allies because you're the strongest, and then all of a sudden the only people left are you and your allies, and then you got to deal with each other, kind of thing, versus if you're coming in as a team or you're coming in with a story and we're trying to figure out the story. So I think there's a lot of different victory conditions that'll change the impact of the game. And whether you start with 100 people or start with 1,000 or start with like 20 teams of 4, you start with, each one of the options creates a much different scenario. But so what do you like most about the game? Like,
I do like I like strategy. So figuring out how to strategize to be stronger than the other participants within the galaxy. I do like the ability to ally or create factions. The galaxy seems smaller this time, though. Where the galaxy felt very, very big. My first time in it, it felt much smaller this time, and that's and I'm not sure why that was. If it was because we had the placement of where our allies were, but the galaxy felt not big enough this time.
For sure, I think we had the most amount of veterans. Like we had, I guess, at least 10 people who kind of knew what they were doing, and they spread pretty quick, right? As soon as you get your third propulsion in, it all depends on the speed. But I guess it depends again. Like what are we in, second month, third month?
I think we're just approaching our second month now.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's interesting. I mean, within 1 month, basically, I think you won the game in a sense. Like I think there has to be some sort of like ways to break blockades. I think ways to sort of blow up big fleets. ways for like the defense to match the offense, like at some point to have a lot of different sort of scenarios that doesn't give one side such an overwhelming advantage. There has to be comebacks.
At this point, defense being stronger than offense is honestly the problem. Like the planets can't be attacked, basically, and that's where I find a challenge. I actually think defense is stronger than offense, which is why we took the strategy we did to only take ships away and to not actually challenge real built defenses, is because the defenses are actually so overmatched against the offense that we adapted our strategy to just kind of be jerks and take all of space away. It's just take the ability to fly through space and not face defensive positions and not take on a battle that would incur losses.
Yeah, I mean that was smart. I mean, I tested quite a bit to see if a battleship could do an independent bombing, but I think on automated defense 2, nothing really is going to get through. Anything under a large amount of ships isn't going to get through, I guess, right?
Even with full shields, if you put every single slot available for shields, it cannot get through automated defense 2.
Really?
Maybe it might need a combination of ground batteries as well, because
Right.
I think I tested it and it did drop bombs, but it didn't live. So it probably got through the automated defense, but not through the ground
Right.
batteries.
Well, we definitely have never come to this part in the game before. Usually it's, there's a couple of strong sides and they haven't come to the real annihilation of the other. But again, because the board seems so small this time and we are in one side and you guys do have, the advantage. So it'll be interesting to see just kind of what happens. Because I know Jib doesn't want to give up. And I'm hoping maybe we can, if you go back for 2 weeks, that's interesting because that at least makes it more of a game, right? I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm going to pull my fleets back. So the fleets will be pulled back. Jib unfortunately does have most of his planets barricaded, but he can deal with that. He knows how. But the fleets will be pulled back.
Okay, and you don't know if your partner is going to do the same, or
we've not discussed this.
Okay. So were you was RCG sort of part of your alliance, or it just didn't kind of come about, or because it sounded like he didn't have a good start?
RCG's just been busy. So he's absolutely part of our alliance. He's just not had as much time to game, but absolutely we're a solid alliance.
You guys are. I wonder about the next version, which supposedly has a much larger galaxy, right? So, I mean, we need a lot of room to grow, and I think a lot more empires to bring in. But congratulations on your victory so far. The evil ones definitely have shown the good guys how to not run the galaxy or how to run it. I'm hoping that something clever can come out of this where we can start to put up a little bit more of a problem for you guys. But is there anything more you wanted to say to anyone watching?
Yeah, just now's the time to move around, get your stuff done. There will be no attacks by the Jabetians unless just don't come into the top right quadrant of the map.
So at the beginning of the game, I was trying to irritate you guys. And the problem is it's a game of attention, right? So if you send in a raider and then you go have a nap, I must admit that you're very good at tracking my independent raiders and eliminating them immediately. As soon as I drop my attention, you would get them.
I had layers of individual ships in solar systems, and then I started flying ships just back and forth across Jabetian space. So if you sent someone, I would already have a ship because they weren't fast enough. So I just had to have enough ships out and about to try and get them. So I started flying ships just back and forth, literally on patrol, waiting to see you come by.
Well, at least I gave you something to do.
You did. I was trying to eliminate the last vestige of resistance in the top right corner of the map, and so you kept me busy through that. That was one other thing the Jabetians did this time, is when there was a lower tech empire that we were attacking, We attacked with destroyers. Although we had battleships and things like that, we attacked with destroyers when attacking and flux cannons and things like that when attacking lower those players up in the top right that I did want to eliminate. However, they face destroyers.
Well, you do have heart within you. That's good to hear.
And sometimes I wouldn't even attack their planet, but they would do things like send out unescorted ships and things. And I felt I was teaching them the game by saying, "Hey, you can't leave a colony ship sitting there for 2 days."
Right, right. You're very good at that. If anything is sitting still, it is going to be dead.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for everyone watching, this has been the Game of Planets, the Galactic Channel. We have just been interviewing Quagar the Pacifist, who has been pacifying this particular game for the last month and doing quite a job of it. And we'll see you. Thank you for talking with us and sharing any. Is there anything you want to say to the rest of the Empire before we go?
Use this time well. The Jabetians will be back in 14 space years.
Okay, we got 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks. Okay, hopefully you can convince your partner to do the same thing. And we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.